We are checking out Rick Ross's biography, Hurricanes. Rick Ross, the hip hop impresario from Florida. Let's go ahead and get into it and come back to my reaction. This is chapter 6. I'm sorry, this is chapter 3. Let's get into it.
Niggas like Fat Sean and Canhead had no aspirations beyond running their little traps in Carroll City, nor did they have the capacity to do so. But even as he ascended to Kingpin, Booby always carried himself more like an ambassador than a dictator. His vision extended beyond the matchbox. Miss Angel's apartment wasn't just a drug lab. It was an armory where everybody stashed their guns. It was a safe house to lay low at following home invasions. Because as much as Booby and his crew were dope boys, they were robbers too. They had a serious stick-up operation going. If one of them got tipped off about a nearby stash house holding bricks, they would ski mask up and go take them. They were hitting the pawn shops and department stores too. Miami is where smash and grab burglaries were invented. They'd round up a few stolen cars and drive one straight through the store's front windows. They'd load up the others with as much jewelry, guns, and clothes as they could and take off into the night. Jabbar and I were sleeping over Miss Angel's the first time I saw them come back from one of these excursions. It was the middle of the night when they busted in, fussing and fighting over the spoils and who was getting what. Whatever clothes didn't fit them or little chains they decided they didn't want, they let me and Jabbar have. We looked up to these niggas and they looked out for us. At first, they probably tolerated us because they knew and respected Big Mike, but eventually, they took a genuine liking to us. T-Man and Treats were the first niggas to front me and Jabbar ounces of crack. We were so young, we really didn't know what to do with it. We just knew we wanted in. So we brought it to Angel's son, Jabbar's cousin Arthur, who showed us how to cut it up into different sized rocks and explained to us our profit margins. We eventually realized that Arthur was robbing us. Since he actually lived at Miss Angel's, he knew where we hid our bomb, and when Jabbar and I would go home for the night, he would go cut up a bunch of rocks for himself out of our stash. It was all love, though. Getting finesse was one of the growing pains of learning the dope game. These guys knew we were too little to be taking over other niggas' corners, so they let us get off our little sacks out of Miss Angel's. When a junkie would come in looking for something small to get him to the next day, they sent him our way to put a couple dollars in our pockets. They looked out for us. When I look back on the path I started heading down, I can't say I didn't know any better. My family was by no means rich, but we weren't living in roach-infested projects either. Carroll City was considered a middle-class neighborhood. It was a refuge from the violence that was happening in Liberty City and Overtown. I'd come from a household with 2 educated and successful parents. I couldn't blame them. Nobody was smoking crack. Nobody was beating on each other. My daddy smoked too many cigarettes and drank too many Michelob Ultras, but it wasn't like his vices were tearing our house apart. He was always real smooth with it. But around the time I started hanging out in the Matchbox, my life at home changed. When I was 11, my parents told my sister and I they were separating. Over the years, they had grown to love and respect one another, and they made a loving home for their children. But I don't know if my parents were ever in love in that way. They didn't have that type of affectionate relationship. As far as divorces go, it wasn't a nasty one. There was no talking bad about each other or fighting over money or the house. There were no lawyers involved. They handled it well. But my daddy moved back up to North Florida, and I didn't see him too much after that. My daddy caught a bus, never looking back, got me standing in the rain, first 50 pack. Fascinated, Port of Miami 2, 2019. My father's absence left a void at home. My mama started having to work even more than she already was, and I started spending more time with guys like Booby and Big Mike. The dope boys became my role model figures. The way the feds tell it, Booby and Mike were monsters preying on their own kind. But I saw a different side of that story. Every Christmas, Booby would host a toy drive at the Omega Center, where hundreds of toys would be given out to the youth of Carroll City. So to me, they were Robin Hood types. All the just say no to drugs messaging I was getting at school was telling me the dope was ruining a lot of lives. But at the same time, I was seeing smiles on kids' faces when they got their first bikes for Christmas. The ethics of hustling was complicated. The line between right and wrong was fuzzy. When I first started elementary school, I wanted to be a good student. Both of my parents were smart as hell, and I looked up to them. But as the years went on, I started realizing that I was damn near retarded when it came to school. Do you know how badly I would have liked to learn Spanish? The prettiest girl in my school was Puerto Rican, and she was my first love. Once a week, she'd come to class in her favorite Menudo t-shirt. That was the boy band all the Spanish girls liked back then. I would have loved to be able to say some fly poppy chulo shit to her. Math was the worst. When it came time to learn the multiplication tables, I had some sort of mental block. My mama got me the flashcards. She hired a tutor for me at one point. I just could not memorize those. That was really the reason I became the class clown. It was the one thing in school I got positive feedback from. But for some reason, when Arthur showed me and Jabbar how to bust down an ounce, that was something I could wrap my head around. 28 grams in an ounce, 36 ounces in a kilo. If I sell a gram for $50, it made sense to me. Big Mike tried to keep us out the streets at first. He didn't like that Jabbar and I were hanging out in the Matchbox. He knew what was going on at Angels and didn't want us to be a part of it. He'd sent Jabbar to Our Lady of Perpetual Help, the Catholic school in Opelika that all the dope boys kids went to, and eventually he took him out of Miami altogether. The problem was Mike never shielded us from seeing all the money, or his gold 500 SEL Benz with the champagne leather seats and windshield wipers on the headlights, or the bricks wrapped in cellophane, or his 308 Winchester with the bubble level scope. You could hit a nigga in another city with that rifle. See, it's one thing to tell a couple jits that selling drugs is wrong, but when you show them what $1 million looks like and have them count it for you, that message goes in one ear and out the other. Suddenly, old Scrappy, that's what we called my daddy's Buick, didn't seem like a nice enough car for me. Suddenly, working 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the car wash and staying on the straight and narrow didn't seem all that appealing either. But Mike did try to warn us. Only 1 out of 1,000 hustlers make it, Mike would always say. When you get older, you're either going to be broke, dead, or serving a life sentence. Trust me. Those are the only things that are going to happen. It was too late, though. I had already seen too much. I was infatuated with wealth. I was infected with greed.
So yeah, that is Rick Ross's descent into the dope game, Miami, Carroll City. Shout out to Carroll City. I got cousins that live out there and stuff. Anyway, it's funny. I'm listening to this book, which is a really good book. The narrator of this book is really good. He's good at narrating. You kind of feel like it's Rick Ross, talking. That's a lot of times. That's what makes a good audio book, when the person can capture the person's essence. He don't sound like Rick Ross, but he has his essence. This is whoever chose him to narrate his book. He makes it really interesting because it feels like Rick Ross is actually talking, But it's funny. I'm looking for the part where he was a correction officer. Officer Ricky. I don't see. It ain't came up yet. Is he gonna put that part in the book, or he's gonna keep that part out? I'm gonna continue on to check out this audio book, and you should check it out too as well. It's on Spotify and it's also on Audible. You can purchase it on Audible. But if you got Spotify, you can listen to it for free. It's called Hurricanes by Rick Ross. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up button and let me know what y'all think about this book in the comments. Hit the thumbs up button. Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Charles on There's World, checking in. Hope you guys having a good evening. Hit that thumbs up button. We are checking out Brad Jordan's book, Diary of a Madman. Really good book by Scarface, one of my favorite rappers coming up. Rap legend, Southern hip hop legend. Well, hip hop legend, period. We ain't got to put the Southern on it. But anyway, this is his book, man. We're gonna go ahead and check it out. This is when he recorded his album Smile and his relationship with Tupac. So I'm really, really looking forward to getting into this, man. If y'all want to check out this book, check it out on Audible. Let's go ahead and get into it, and I'm gonna come back with my reaction. Hit that thumbs up button.
I built my first house while we were in Houston recording The Resurrection, and I loved it. The process, the house, the whole shit. I just turned 25. But even though I had a new home in my hometown, I felt like my life was in LA. Whenever I was in Texas, I was always in a hurry to get back to the West Coast. I was living at the CBS Apartments on Beverly Boulevard and working out of Enterprise Studios. Mike Dean was doing a lot of work out there too, and we'd hook up, hit the studio with a shit ton of drugs, and see what we could create. I was focused on Face Mob and The Resurrection, but Mike was touching everything, mixing down damn near every release that was coming through Rap-A-Lot at the time. And that's how we met Tone Capone. Tone Capone was a producer from Oakland who blew the fuck up after he produced I Got Five on It for a local group he'd been fucking with, Loonies. That record was huge. I'm talking Mind Playing Tricks on Me huge, but even bigger than that. Mind Playing Tricks on Me broke the top 25. I Got Five on It went top 10 and platinum as a single. By late 1995, Tone was in demand. Everyone wanted him to make another I Got Five on It type hit. Back in the early 90s, Rap-A-Lot had picked up this dude from the Bay, Seagram. We'd put out a couple of albums on him, but even though he'd made some noise, he hadn't really popped. So in late 95, Seagram hooked up with Tone to cut some records for his third album, Souls on Ice. They recorded in Houston, and then Tone flew out to LA to work with Mike Dean on the mix. I guess Mike liked what he heard because he brought Tone in to work with us. It was a great call on Mike's part, because Tone Capone was no joke. The Diary had been me, Mike Dean, and Joe. But now, in Tone, we had another stone-cold motherfucker on the team. The best chemistry I've ever had in the studio was with Mike Dean, N.O. Joe, and Tone Capone. Tone's got a real raw live musician funk to his sound, and he was real in the pocket with it. His shit was a bit harder and more direct than some of the shit we'd been fucking with before. And when you put us all together, that shit was mean as a motherfucker. It was extra crisp and too raw. There wasn't a grand plan or strategy heading into a new album. The mindset was just get in the studio and work. We'd figure out what we had after we had it. So I just show up with what I always brought to the table, an unyielding commitment to block out the bullshit, provoke thought, and just do me. And we'd go from there. That was always my thing. Never compromise the integrity of the craft. We started working on The Untouchable in early '96. I was smoking a whole lot of weed and doing a lot of drugs. I'm talking a lot of drugs. I think of that album as my weed and ecstasy album because I wrote the whole thing high on weed and recorded everything while I was rolling on X. Ecstasy was just starting to become common then. And you were just starting to see motherfuckers walking around X'd out with their jaws clenched tight as shit. Mike had gotten into it, and he started telling us about it. And shit, we didn't think twice. We just wanted to get high. But I'll tell you, that feeling of euphoria that ecstasy gives you is really something else. It's just a beautiful, nice, and clean high. And no matter what you were doing when you did it, when you were on X, you were going to do that thing 500 million times better, and that's all you were going to want to do. So if you were recording when it kicked in, you weren't about to leave the studio. You were going to sit there making music for hours, experimenting with shit until you found that one incredible sound that you couldn't let go. Just listen to Faith. That's some spacey shit right there. I remember writing Mary Jane one night at my mom's house in Houston. It was dark, and I was lying on the floor listening to the Commodores Say Yeah in my headphones, while my mama was asleep with the TV on. And I wrote the song to that. The original hook was Say Yeah and everything. Well, when I hooked back up with Tone, he had a beat he was fucking with for a record we were thinking about called Project Ho. It was kind of a twist on Rick James's Mary Jane, and it was playing in the other room. We were fucking around with Say Yeah, and I rapped the Mary Mary on top of it. And I guess a light went on for Tone, because he brought me into the room where the Project Ho beat was playing and was like, do that shit again. So I did, and I told him I thought it sounded offbeat, but Tone was convinced. He'd always thought of the Project Ho beat as more of a weed record anyway. So I guess he'd found what he wanted, because it didn't matter what I said. He wasn't hearing it. He was like, no, it's right, bro. It's right. Trust me. Tone had the bass and the drums down, and then Mike came in and added in the harps and the organ. And then Tone went back on top of that and fleshed it out with the string melody. And the record was done. And that's how we recorded The Untouchable for the most part. Just a whole lot of collaboration. Tone and I would get something started, or Mike and I would get something started, or I'd just start fucking with some shit on my own, and then we'd all hook up and fuck with it, add some extra layers, and bring it home. And sometimes it was just about taking shit out, too. Like, I remember when we were recording Southside, Tone had built the foundation of that beat, laid the groove and the drums, and Mike went on top of it and added a bunch of shit to it. But I decided to pull it all back out because I thought it sounded tougher, leaner, and a bit more straight ahead. Years later, Tone told me that he ran into Jay-Z in New York, and Jay rapped my whole Southside verse to him a cappella, just because he was fucking with it that hard. Can you believe that shit? I wasn't there, but still. And just think, when I was first starting out, we were struggling to get love in New York. But of course, the big record on The Untouchable was Smile. That was the song that drove that album to the top of the charts. I first got to know Tupac in 1991. We did some records together along the way, but I probably spent more time with him on the road than in the studio. And over the years, we really developed a close personal relationship. We were partners more than we were collaborators, so we were never tripping off of making songs together. We were friends, and we knew the music would figure itself out. We'd been together back in the early days when we were all underdogs. Him, me, Too Short, Spice One, MC Breed, Richie Rich, the DOC in 1991, 92, 93 and shit like that. Nobody believed in us. We were young and from outside of New York and on that reality shit. We had some records and we had our fans, but nobody fucked with us like that. They definitely didn't expect us to make it big. But then all of a sudden, it was like, bam, we were fucking huge. I'm talking #1 albums, top 40 hits, the whole shit. We struggled together, fighting for that success, side by side. We were there when the DOC lost his voice, the whole shit. And then when motherfuckers started blowing up in 93 and 94, it was like, damn, we did it, you know? But it goes without saying that Pac was special. Not only did he have the coldest work ethic ever, he was just straight up off the chain at all times. Like, we learned real quick that you didn't ride with Pac. If you were going out with him, you always took your own car because that motherfucker was reckless. He did not give a fuck for real. It didn't matter where he was, on stage, behind the wheel, just walking down the street or at a restaurant or a hotel lobby, whatever. He was a loose cannon. He was the kind of kid that you want on your football team because he didn't think twice about anything, and he wasn't scared of shit. You could be 10 times his size, and if he had a problem with you, he was going to let it be known, like, fuck it. You had to respect him, but at the same time, you just watch him do shit like, damn, that motherfucker is crazy. I remember one time we were on the road together getting show money running all through the Midwest. This was in the Strictly for My Niggas and Tupacalypse Now days, before he put out Me Against the World and all of that shit. We were in Minnesota, and he was opening up for us. I don't know what it was, but the crowd was rowdy as a motherfucker that night, throwing shit at the stage, starting fights, you name it. And Pac wasn't having it. So in the middle of his set, he tells the crowd, next motherfucker that throws something up on this stage, I'm going to bust their motherfucking mouth. Better yet. And then he goes into a bag he's got stashed at the back of the stage and brings out the guns. Man, shit. As soon as he did that, that motherfucker emptied out so quick, the whole crowd was ghost. I had to pull him aside when he came backstage like, homeboy, what the fuck did you go and do that for? You fucked up our money. They're not going to pay me because we didn't have a chance to perform. And you bet your ass, after that bullshit, we switched up the order of the sets so we could do our thing before he got out there and did whatever the fuck he was going to do. I wasn't about to lose another check just because he had a problem with someone in the crowd and got to fighting. Fuck that. Of course, the very next night we're in Milwaukee, and he got into some shit either at the show or at the club after the show. And next thing you know, it seems like the whole goddamn city is in the lobby of the hotel looking to tear shit up. I have no idea what got into them, but we're all upstairs while motherfuckers are down there busting out windows and breaking shit. And Pac comes barreling into my room like, let's go see those motherfuckers. He wasn't trying to have anybody come up and try to intimidate him or threaten him or none of that shit. He didn't care that we were in Milwaukee and we had us and they had their whole town. I was like, man, are you crazy? You better sit your motherfucking ass down. Them niggas are down there shooting. But that's just how it was with him. That was Pac. And we were there for each other through thick and thin, thick and thin. That's one of the reasons why we didn't hang out super tough all of the time. The way he was and the way I am, he would have been out there getting into all sorts of shit, which would have led to me fighting all sorts of motherfuckers all the time because the way our relationship was. If he was going to get into it, then I was going to have to get into it too. If motherfuckers were going to start shooting, then I was going to have to start shooting too. We were going to do all of that shit together. I just happened to never be around when the shit really went down. Like when he got shot at Quad Studios in Times Square. I was across the street upstairs at the DoubleTree. If I had known that he was in trouble, we would have both gotten shot, or those motherfuckers would have been dead. One of the two. Same thing with the night he got killed. I'd just been with him in L.A. recording Smile. Then he went to Vegas for the fight and got shot on the Strip. That shit fucked me up. The night we recorded Smile, a buddy of mine had been standing outside on Sunset Boulevard when Pac drove by with Eddie Griffin. They saw him, busted a U-turn, and said we should come meet them at the Hilton. So we walked over there to have a few drinks, and after a while, Pac was like, I'm going to come pick you up to do this record. I told him I was with it, so he cut out, and we went down the street to chill for a bit. We're hanging out, and then this motherfucker pulls up in a black Hummer with all kinds of sirens and shit on it. And he hits that loudspeaker like, Brad Jordan, come out with your hands up. Man, shit. I'd been smoking that good L.A. weed, too, so I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I turned to one of my boys like, yo, what the fuck did I do? My man was like, don't trip, I've got you. And we head downstairs, and it's Pac in this fucking commando Hummer. That motherfucker had me going, too. He wanted to go to the studio, but of course I wasn't about to go anywhere with his ass. I never knew who kept giving him cars. I thought everybody knew that motherfucker couldn't drive. I got my own ride and met him over there. We jammed like a motherfucker and ended up laying down Smile. That was the last time I ever saw him. I was in the middle of the fucking desert on the way back to Houston when I got that call that Pac had been shot. I got the news and sighed like, again? It wasn't like it was the first time it had happened. He was always getting into something. It had gotten to the point that when you got news like that about him, you almost didn't even think about it. It was fucked up for sure. Nobody wants to get shot or wants to hear about their people getting shot. But you kind of just knew he was going to make it. He was Pac. It had started to seem like he was damn near invincible with all of the shit he was always getting into and all of the stories he lived to tell. Shit. When I first got the news he'd been shot, my first thought wasn't, oh shit, what happened? It was, shit, Pac's really about to be loose now. You know, Pac wasn't the kind of guy you wanted to shoot and then have him back out there on the streets. I just knew he was going to be all right, and he was going to be even more wild once he recovered. I just knew it. So I was concerned, but I was certain he was going to pull through. He always did. And then he didn't. And 7 days later, on September 13th, he was dead. I was in Houston when I got the call that he had died. That can't be true, I thought. It has to be a rumor. No way Pac is just going to die like that. I just couldn't believe he was gone. This was 1996, and still in the early days of the internet. But when they released the autopsy, I looked it up online. Seeing my friend lying there all cut up cold and dead blew me away. I flipped out and just started screaming, "What the fuck did you do?" It hurt me so much to see him like that, with his guts all open and the bullet wounds marked with sticks. It probably would have been better if I had never seen those photos. I've seen a whole lot of crazy shit in my time, but seeing autopsy pictures of your friends is a whole different thing. After my childhood friend Smitty was killed, I saw his autopsy pictures too. I hope I never have to see some shit like that again. But as soon as I saw those photos, I knew he was gone. I'd lost my friend, and he was never coming back. He was a great guy, and he was still so young, just 26 years old. I've got kids as old as he was when he was killed. I really miss him. Losing him broke my heart. After Pac died, we went back in the studio to finish Smile. Tone rearranged the hook a bit, and then we polished up the beat and the mix. Stevie Wonder was working in the studio right next door to us, and we had met one of his assistants. So Tone asked her if we might be able to get Stevie on the hook. He came over to check it out, and we played him the record, and Tone swears he saw Stevie shed a tear while he was listening to the song. There was no denying it. Smile would have been a powerful record even if Pac hadn't been killed. But his death just added so much more weight to the song. It was heavy, heavy stuff. Tragically, it was also all too real.
That was deep. That was really, I almost kind of shed a tear at the end of that. The way, whoever, I don't know who the narrator is on this book, Diary of a Madman, Scarface, Brad Jordan's biography. Y'all can get it on Audible. I don't know who the narrator is, but he's really good. Because that part at the end, he was really getting emotional about Scarface's friendship with Pac, and how he saw the autopsy pictures and he realized that, damn, my friend is really gone. That part kind of had me about to shed a tear. I was like, whoa, like it kind of brought me back to that time when I was a teenager. And I remember, everybody remembers where they were that day. If you were around in 96, I was just getting ready to graduate high school. And I remember me and my friends with Garrett, my friend Derek, and my friend Kevin, we were driving in my old beat up Monte Carlo. We were going to the Jones High game. And I remember it came on the radio. This was back before the internet. Internet got big, you know, the internet was around then, but it wasn't as prevalent. Like we didn't have cell phones back then where you could we didn't have cell phones where you could like look it up real fast. You had to get it from either radio, the newspaper, or on television. So people didn't have cell phones back then. So if you heard bad news, you had to hear it on the radio, or like I said, on the news. And we pulled up at the parking lot, and Tupac has just passed away from Las Vegas. We was like, what? I was like, what? Me and my friends were like stuck, like what? We all just looked at each other like, Tupac gone? You know what I'm saying? And I can remember us walking up to the stadium to go to the game, and all our friends, we were seeing our friends, walking up to the stadium. Hey man, dude, y'all hear Tupac gone? What about? What? Tupac gone? And in the room, and then people start going around, and then we heard, it was another girl that was on a cheerleading squad. She was like, I just heard Tupac gone, So it's just crazy how you hear these stories of where you were when he passed away, and that was crazy. But also that photo, I remember it was speculating that Tupac was still alive, because he had came out with that album. This is how the rumors started about Tupac still being alive. After he passed away, Death Row dropped the album. Suge and them dropped the album after he passed away called Machiavelli, the 7-Day Theory. And if you research who Machiavelli was, he was this guy from back in the day, 20th century, I guess 1800s days, and he ended up faking his own demise to escape retribution. People were after him, so he faked his own demise so he can get away. So people were like, well, Tupac, the costume after Tupac, his mom was a Black Panther. She was the government was kind of looking at her because she was part of this, so-called organization, the Black Panthers, So we was like, oh, that's what's going on with Pac. Pac's still living. He letting us know by calling this album Machiavelli. Pac is somewhere. I remember it was rumored that Tupac was in Cuba. It was all kind of rumors going around. I remember being in college and hearing these rumors. Tupac was somewhere in another country. He was in Cuba. Fidel Castro was hiding Tupac. He was over there with his godmother. Was it Asada Shakur? She's in Cuba now because she is wanted in the U.S. for her being a part of the Black Panther Party and all that kind of stuff. So we was thinking, oh, that's where Pac at. Pac over there with her, his godmama. You know what I'm saying? That Pac ain't dead. So it was rumors going around that he was, Pac ain't gone, Pac's still alive. And then when those autopsy photos came out, this was back before any video. You couldn't really put video on the internet back then, but photos, I remember back in the day, it took a long time to download the photo with the internet. The internet was so slow back then, but this was pre-internet. This is even before Google became big. And they even have search engines back then. Back then on the internet, you could only send emails and chat and send photos back and forth. So the photo had came out that Tupac, his autopsy photo came out. Somehow, I guess somebody that worked at the hospital where Tupac passed away that shouldn't have been doing it, took a snapshot of Tupac, laid out, because there was that rumor going around, Tupac's still alive, When that snapshot of Tupac, the one that Scarface was talking about, when that snapshot circulated, and we were like, oh snap, Tupac is really gone. It was a big thing when the internet, though, when people, when the internet first started, of celebrities' autopsy photos in the late, that was the big thing. There was some demented thing with us in the late 90s, us teenagers, the pre-Napster days. We were infatuated with, after the Tupac photo came out, people were infatuated with celebrity autopsy photos. You know what I'm saying? So I think they had Selena's had started circulating after Tupac's. Selena's autopsy photos came out. And then JFK, somebody dug up JFK's autopsy photos. Malcolm X autopsy photos had started circulating. Who else? Biggie, of course, passed away a couple months later. His autopsy photos, started floating around the internet. And then I think, who was it? It was somebody else too that was big when I was in college. I remember being at white people used to always have the connection back, especially with the pre-internet. They would get stuff, And I remember this one cat that me and my friend Vic knew. He had a photo of TLC. What was her name? Left Eye. When Left Eye passed away, she died. She was. I think she was in Honduras, and she had that car accident. And it started floating around. And he's like, "Hey man, y'all want to see Left Eye's autopsy picture?" It was the picture of her in the I guess you call it the morgue, they hadn't even shipped her back here yet. Her body was still in Honduras. I guess it was Honduras she was in. It was someplace she was in, some country she was in, and she would leave, and she had the car accident. But it was her in her pajamas. She was wearing these pajamas, I guess, when she had the accident, and it was this gash on her head. We was like, ooh, we was like, wow, that's Left Eye. She looked like she was asleep, but she had this big gash, I guess, when she got hit, in the car. And I was like, oh wow. But yeah, for some reason, us weird late teens and early 20s, we had this big obsession with celebrity autopsy photos for some reason. And then it started to become creepy, and then people just stopped doing it. But yeah, anyway, what do y'all think about this book, man? Scarface, Diary of a Madman. Check it on Audible. Let me know what y'all think about it too when y'all check it out. Leave in the comments and subscribe to Charles and Ezra. Where were you when Tupac passed away? For those of you that were around, let me know in the comments. Hit that thumbs up button.